What's going on, passionate Pokemon players? I'm Ryan, and we're here for another episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. This week, I'm excited for this one. We are going back to Charmander and Charizard deck. It's our kind of going and making a new deck with the Charizard EX. But this one is not an all Charizard deck as it was. This one is just going to be a Charizard with Pecharunt deck. So kind of a darker themed deck, dark theme because Pecharunt and Charizard are. But what we're going to do today, we're going to get into each card of the deck and why I'm including it. Then we're going to go over the strategies, strengths, and weaknesses of the deck. And finally, we will go through some other cards to consider swapping in rather than what we have in there. So, without further ado, let's get into what we came to do. Alright, new setup, who dis? I've got a new little way of showing off our decks during these videos. Gotta upgrade, constantly improve in order to be the very best, like no one ever was. Anyway, so here's what we've got. We've got the whole deck list on the side now. If you're on desktop, it should be pretty easy to see now, hopefully. And then if you're on mobile, maybe still not so much. But hey, at least we've got it there. So let's go through it. Let's go through the Pokemon first. We've got Charmander. Nice and large up here. Pretty card. I've got 4 of these 151 Charmanders in here. Reason I went with this is because of 70 HP, right? He's not going to be able to get one shot by Dragapults hitting our bench. We're not going to have any bench protection. Not that there's really anything to defend against Dragapult anyway, which is really what we're looking at now for everything. Also want to say as we get into it, every card in this deck is going to survive rotation. So that actually wasn't something I actually tried to do, but as I was looking at it afterwards, I kind of said, do we have anything that's going to rotate out? And no, so that's good as well. So this deck's going to survive at least for another year as we get through rotation. Cool. So we've got the 4 Charmanders from 151, as I mentioned, and not only for its 70 HP, but I do like in a pinch Blazing Destruction. If he does get stuck inactive and you have to attack or something, you're able to discard a Stadium, and sometimes you may want to just throw him inactive for that. You know, sometimes your opponents have stadiums that you want to get rid of. We don't have stadiums to kind of override the other ones. So that's pretty good. You're really going to want to use steady fire breathing, but I mean, I guess. So then from there, let's see, what else do we have? Charmeleon, also the 151. Again, I'm going with him because of the higher HP of 100. The other thing I do like about this Charmeleon, though, it does have a high cost and you discard, but Fire Blast for 90 is going to deal with those pesky Mimikyus that go into active and don't let you attack because you have an ability. Also consider the fact that you may be dealing with Iron Thorns, which Fezandipiti, Pecharunt, and Charizard EX all have abilities, including Pidgeot. So, I mean, Charmeleon can deal some damage. Honestly, you're probably still going to lose those games, but you know, you can hit him for 90, and then he's going to one-shot you probably. So, maybe you can take him out faster than he could get energy. But anyway, really, this one will deal you well for dealing with Mimikyus at the very least. So you may have to kind of mess around a bit and get loaded up without your opponent noticing that you're going to take it out. They might just put him back, but hey, you can KO the Pecharunts if you can at least get Fire Blast on there and hopefully continuously refresh those energies to one-shot him, because he's only going to be dealing 70, so it's going to take 2 turns, unless they get a Bravery Charm on him, which I've seen. So anyway, let's move on. Charizard EX, everybody's favorite flying lizard, at least mine, and especially this card. Like, oh my gosh, I was lucky enough to pull this one, so love this card. Anyways, but there's not a lot that needs to be said about him. I think anybody who's playing the game in the past year or so either loves or hates this card, or maybe even both. But here he is there. Infernal Rain is going to let us load up our Pokemon with fire energies, and then Burning Darkness for 2 is going to deal 30 more damage in addition to the 180 for each prize card taken. So I have 4 of these. I did opt out of putting a 151 Charizard EX in there as much as I considered it, to be quite honest. I I decided against it. I just think it's better to go full on dark for a few reasons, mainly because we're using Pecharunt combined. So let's kind of skip Fezandipiti and go with Pecharunt for a minute, because these are kind of how the deck is built around. So Pecharunt EX does have the subjugating chains, which is why I went all dark. So once during your turn, you can switch one of your bench dark Pokemon except Pecharunt EX with your active. If you do, the new active Pokemon is now poisoned, right? And you can't use it more than once. So that is pretty good. It allows us to, not get caught in active. Which is part of why I eliminated the Obsidian Flames Charmander. There's no way we're going to get trapped in active. So there's no need to get a self-destructing Pokemon. Although, in essence, these guys are kind of slow time bombs because they're going to be poisoned. And then, yes, note that the new active Pokemon is poison. So we'll talk about it later, but we are going to use some Binding Mochis here so that we can deal more damage with our Charizard, and he can really hit hard. And then, in a pinch, Irritated Outburst is going to do 60 damage for each prize card your opponent has taken. So this one's kind of a sneaky one. It's obviously a very similar move to Charizard's, but it's not. It's going to deal no damage until we've taken those prize cards. Can deal a maximum in battle, obviously, of 300 damage after 5 prize cards. Except you take the 61. But so that's not bad. That's a good late game move that can happen. It's kind of odd. It really depends on how your opponent wants to approach things, whether they want to just focus in on taking out your Charizard EXs. But to be honest, a lot of times they are just going to boss up your Pecharunt EXs because they are very squishy anyway with that 190 HP. So that's something to really think about as you're going and getting in. And that's also why, as you'll see on this list, I have Bravery Charms to at least make them a little bit less squishy. Hopefully not get one shot, but you never know. So let's go through and talk about the Fezandipiti now. I did only include one. It's again kind of more of a bonus card. Like, I'm not going to spend resources to get this Fezandipiti out, but there's some good things that happen if we do, right? Obviously, first is flip the script, where after one of your cards is knocked out, or after your opponent's knocked out, you can draw 3 cards, right? So that's a good way of just having like a mini draw engine for every time you get knocked out. Of course, if you're already loaded up on your Charizard EXs, that may only happen twice in a game, but you know what? It's a good card. He's got 210 HP, so still rather squishy, but if you can throw a Bravery Charm on it, he can get a little bit higher and hopefully not get one shot. And then Cruel Arrow is going to, for 3 energy, the good thing about these is it's 3 of any type. So it's going to do 100 damage to one of your opponent's Pokemon. So helps you with some bench sniping. Your opponent may want to do some retreats so that they can try to get out of damage, and then you can throw the Fezandipiti out there to deal. And let's say you're crazy enough to be able to trap them trap some like high retreat Pokemon inactive. Sometimes you can win that way too. I've definitely got some wins. I did use this deck a ton because I really like it, just for fun before I started making content. So I'm pretty familiar and played a lot of matchups with it. A little bit less in the last sets though. Last few sets that have come out. So I like this Fezandipiti. It's a fun card. If not, then cool. All right, then we've got Pidgey over here. I chose this particular one, which I guess would be the... I don't remember what it's exactly from first, because this one's the Paldean Fates one, the shiny. But I chose this one for Call for Family. Right, because if he gets stuck in the active, maybe you don't have any other Pokemon and you went second and you're about to lose. Call for Family can potentially save you from losing the entire game and obviously help you get your Charmander or whatever. I mean, they're 2 basic Pokemon, so they can even be the EXs of the Pecharunt and the Fezandipiti. So if you do get stuck in active with the Pidgey, you could throw an energy on him and get some more, and maybe he's going to get knocked out and you choose another freaking Pidgey, who knows, right? So we've got those. In terms of everything too, I haven't mentioned, but Charmander, as you're going to see up on top, I've got 4 Charmanders, 2 Charmeleons. The reason is because I need to also have some rare candies available for Pidgey, and if they get prized, so kind of helps me a little bit. I'm not going to go with any Pidgeotos. Charizard EX, I've got 4. Fezandipiti 1, Pecharunt 2, Pidgey 2, and Pidgeot EX 2. So hopefully they don't all get prized. This is a deck that wants a lot of cards to work, so it is a weakness that we'll talk about in terms of consistency. But anyway, if you can get the Pidgeot EX out, which should be one of your priorities, then the amount of cards doesn't matter unless you get prized, because you can pretty much pull what you want at will. So anybody who plays Pidgeot kind of knows that. You pull anything, so it does help with having fewer amounts of cards in terms of getting lucky to top deck or draw, because you can just pull what you need. So anyway, as we all know, quick search is going to let you search for any card in your deck that you want. Bless 3 Win can discard a Stadium for 120. Usually you're not going to load up any energies on your Pidgeot EX, but in a pinch he can hit for 120 damage and discard a Stadium. Alright, so that is all the Pokemon. I did try in this deck a few different draw engines with the Barrels, the Radiant Greninjas, and didn't quite like how they were going. The Pidgeot just seems to work best for me, and again, it's going to survive rotation anyway. You're going to see a lot more Pidgeot in there. Get ready to learn Pidgeot, buddy! Alright, and next up we have our supporter cards. Starting off with Buddy-Buddy Poffin, kind of going back to my MO of having 3 of most supporter cards. Buddy-Buddy Poffin, I throw 3, and then Nest Ball, I have 2. Obviously, the Buddy Poffins are going to be able to pull out our Pidgeys and our Charmanders, and then the Nest Balls are going to be used to pull our Pecharunts and our Fezandipiti. So I got 3 of each, and I think it really helps kind of having 6 total ways of pulling Pidgeys and Charmanders. In my opinion, those should be the priorities, because if you can get your Charizard is the attacker and your Pidgeot is your in essence draw engine or whatever you want to call it, right? Then I have Night Stretcher. I have 3 Night Stretchers just to help us be able to pull back what we need. This deck may need energies. You know, I've got I've got 7 fire energies and 3 darks. You may need some fire energies, and maybe your darks get discarded and you want to throw them on a Pecharunt or your Fezandipiti or whatever. Shoot, maybe even your Pidgeot. Really, it helps too, like if for those that are like taking out your Pecharunts, which are going to be the targets, you could just quickly grab them again. When I was playing Roseanne's backup, sometimes it was annoying that, like, okay, cool, I got a Roseanne's backup, I got my Pecharunt back in the deck, but now I don't have a way to pull it. Right, so Night Stretcher just gets it right back to hand. As a lover of Clara, I wish that card was still out. It's not. So, you know, we'll deal with Night Stretcher, which has become one of my favorite staples in any deck, as most people are. Right, Prime Catcher. Prime Catcher is the ace spec I'm going with. Of course, I considered Hero's Cape and Maximum Belt, as I often do in decks like this, but Prime Catcher is the best, considering we want all of our Charizards to have Binding Mochi anyway, so why would we want to put a different tool on them? Max Belt is going to do 50 more damage, whereas the Binding Mochi does 40, not being an ace spec. So Prime Catcher is much better to kind of get our opponents up there. We don't necessarily need it to swap one of ours to the active, but the good thing is in many ways, the good thing is having us be able to get our opponents in active. Right. All right, and then Rare Candy. There's no way around having 4 Rare Candies. If I could have 6, I would, because, you know, we've got our Pidgey and we've got our Charmander in the deck. So and that's why I also have 2 of the Charmeleons, because you know, you need them. You need those Rare Candies. If a few of them are prized, and people do stuff like devolutions and stuff, you're really going to be in a terrible spot. I'd always try to kind of spare 1 in case one of your Pidgeys gets devolved, so that you can get a second one. And also, you know, be careful with your Charmeleons as well. They can be Ultra Ball fodder if you need them to grab something, but keep it in mind and keep track of how many you have, as well as Rare Candies in the deck, right? All right, Ultra Ball, 3 Ultra Balls. Of course, we want to be able to pull what we want. Isn't this a cool version of the Ultra Ball? Nice and large. I think I have 1 copy of these in real life, which actually, this is my 1 deck in real life that I bling out, that I try to max rarity for it. So I've got some cool like golden nest balls and Ultra Balls and all that good stuff in there. Anyway, Arven. So this is part of the reason, along with Pidgeot, this is part of the reason why we can afford to have fewer than 4 copies of a lot, because we're able to just pull what we need. You know, we do have 4 Arvens, so maybe we're going to Pidgeot into Arven, into item, into tool or whatever. So Arven is just a great one. There's no real need to explain that one, because we have a ton of item cards here in the deck, and then we have our couple tools, which are Binding Mochi and then Bravery Charm, so that we can help our Pecharunts and Fezandipitis. Right. Bosses orders. This one was one I'd like to have 3 bosses in this deck, but I just couldn't figure out how to fit in that 3rd one. But I feel okay about it because we obviously have Prime Catcher. So in essence, we do have 3 bosses orders, and one of them isn't a trainer, so we can use them. So yeah. A lot of times end game, I'm kind of going 2 turns in a row, bosses orders, to boss up the Pokemon I need to get the win with my Charizard. So the bosses is really good in combination with Pidgeot, and of course I'm sure I've taken my fair share of hits from that same move. Iono. I do have 3 Ionos. I think Iono's a good one, especially early game because this deck does have a lot of kind of random cards. Sometimes you can get handlocked and just, you know, pray that you get an Iono. And obviously it's going to help you to get your opponent down in cards. It's just a great combo with your Charizard EX, where you're hitting hard late game and you want to, you know, make it tougher for them to get out of it and have less cards in hand. So Iono, I have 3. Okay, now Janine's Secret Art. Now this one is one that's kind of debatable if we do want it in the deck. I think it fits, and I think it's kind of a nice little bonus to help us through. So we're going to choose up to 2 of our dark Pokemon for each of those. You search your deck for a basic energy, dark energy, attach it to that Pokemon, then shuffle the deck. If you attached, that Pokemon is now poisoned. Now this one's like, So number 1... our Charizard doesn't need Dark Energy. However, if you are struggling and maybe your Pecharunts are discarded or prized or whatever, it does help us to at least poison our Charizard EX so that he can deal more damage. The other thing is too is it kind of is a sneaky way of loading up your Pecharunt / Fezandipiti with energy, as your Pecharunt does need those darks to attack. So sometimes you can get him ready in 1 turn. Let's say maybe you already have 1 dark energy, you know that you have 1 or 2 left in your deck. You attach to that Pecharunt, you attach from hand, and now your Pecharunt can attack, whereas your opponent maybe thought that there's no way this bad boy's attacking. Maybe they didn't even think you were playing any dark energy in the deck. So I have caught my opponents off guard with it before. It's also a really good way of loading up our Fezandipiti too. A lot of times your Charizard may be able to throw 2 energies on him, and then this is the 3rd one there. Just note that I'm only playing 3 dark energies, so really want to make sure that you're able to use it. If not, like if you know that you're out, then this one's a good Ultra Ball fodder, right? But I think this one's a good one. It's got a few good uses, so I did put 2 in there. It's another one I would like 3, but I think we're fine with just 2 in this deck. Binding Mochi, now this is, you know, kind of card 3 that this deck is built around, right? Binding Mochi, getting us poisoned with the Mochi, getting us poisoned with the Pecharunt, and then throwing a Binding Mochi on our Charizard in order to have him deal more damage. Also, I've occasionally used this on Fezandipiti too. Note that Fezandipiti is only going to hit for 140, I believe, if it's on the active. It won't on the bench, even if he's poisoned. If I remember right, I've used this a few times. So it does help. He will do more damage to the active with poison, but not bench. And then Bravery Charm. Bravery Charm is another necessity I think really helps Pecharunt. The difference between 190 and 240 is many times the difference between being one-shot. You want to, as soon as you get a Binding Mochi on your Charizard, or Charmander or Charmeleon, whatever, you want to get yourself a Bravery Charm on that Pecharunt, protect him that way. A lot of times he'll get hit, cool, he'll get bossed up and hit, he'll still have some HP left, and you can just swap out. Like, for example, he's going to survive a Dragapult now, at least once. You know, obviously, maybe he's already got some damage on the bench, but he can survive a 200 hit, which is a little bit more common than a 240, so I think so, right? All right, energy, I've got 3 dark and 7 fire. I think it's debatable if maybe we want to go 4 and 6, but I think you want to stick with 7 just to really make sure that you have enough for your Charizards, and then at the same time too, with Charizard's ability, this helps us maybe load up our Fezandipiti. You know, you only need 6 total for 3 Charizards, so then kind of you've got a little bit of flexibility there. You might not always do 3 Charizards in battle. Maybe you'll go Fezandipiti, but you at least have enough to do so, and hopefully by the time you know you've got, if a few of them are prized, and you've gotten them back before that last Charizard. So that's where I'm at there, right? Let's talk about some of the strategies of the deck and how to play it. Obviously, you are going with Charizard and Pecharun as your priorities to get out there, kind of. You know, you want to get your Charizards out there with the Pecharunt and then throw a Binding Mochi on it. At the very least, if you want to just start fast, focus on that. Now, on the other end, you may want to focus even more so on getting your Pidgeot out, because from there, it's going to help you get the Zards and Pecharunts. But you may want to kind of see what your opponent's doing. You know, are they playing a little bit faster, a little bit slower? Because if you're not careful and you want to focus on your Pidgeot, then you may just be too slow and they're already set up and knocking you out, including your Pidgeot, right? Whereas you may be able to just knock them out quicker with your Zard. So kind of thinking about that and how we want to proceed is, you know, depending on the matchup. All right, strengths, it's hard hitting. And even more hard hitting with the Mochi, right? I mean, late game, you probably don't even need Charizard to be poisoned, but early on, if we're able to hit for 240, that's going to knock out a lot of these basic EXs, just straight from the beginning before any prize cards are taken. You know, if they knock out one of your Charizard EXs, that second one with the Binding Mochi is going to hit for 280. Now, online, I think I'm still pretty low in the ladder, but right now we're seeing, you know, as Prismatics just came out, we're seeing a ton of these Evolution cards that are at 280. One Charizard EX gets knocked out, that automatically gets you 240. Now, then from there with the Mochi, you're going to be hitting for 280, and you're going to be able to one-shot those, where they're going to hit for 280 against you. You're not going to be able to one-shot you, so you can do a 2-for-1 and really just destroy these decks, right? Obviously, this is stronger as the game goes. You can kind of flip the script a lot of times if maybe you've gotten hurt early, and you know this 330 bad boy is going to be hitting. Even with poison, it's not a huge deal. He's going to take two hits to KO unless, you know, you somehow got that same Charizard out there for 5-6 turns, which by then you're probably going to win anyway if they can't knock him out, right? Fezandipiti being able to hit bench is really nice. You know, sometimes it's going to help you, and obviously you can even retreat into that Fezandipiti for free and maybe finish off the match in many ways, right? Fezandipiti hitting the bench, free retreat, right? I mean, in essence, we have free retreat as long as it's a dark Pokemon, and really, you know, once your Pidgeot EX is out there, that's also a free retreat. So it really makes you flexible in terms of who you can get in active. You know, stall decks aren't going to work, which I think Snorlax is rotating out anyway, but if any other type of stall deck comes where they're trying to trap you in active, it ain't gonna happen unless they knock out your Pecharun, right? Weaknesses, the one big thing is Pech and Fez are targets. Many opponents, I think those are the matchups I struggle with most, are when my opponent decides, you know what, I'm just going to target them. You know, we lose our free retreat, and it's an easy 2 prizers. These are basics that are rather squishy, so when they're targeting those, and if they just kind of focus on that, then those are the matches I'm often losing. Whereas they're just trying to be like, oh no, I want to knock out the big attacker. You know, those are the ones I'm usually able to win because I can knock them out quicker than me, There's no real draw engine, and that's kind of the inconsistency of it. Because really, like, Pidgeot is good, as great of a card as it is. It can sometimes be tough to set up because we obviously need the Rare Candy and Pidgeot in hand. And you kind of have to make decisions of which one we'll use. Obviously, you're usually going to go, if you have a Rare Candy in hand and an Ultra Ball, and ooh, which one do I choose? You want to probably evolve your Pidgey into the Pidgeot so that you can get that engine. 280, he's usually not going to be one shot, but so it can sometimes be tough to get both of those cards in hand. Also, considering I'm only playing 2 Pidgey, 2 Pidgeot, we can have issues with them being prized, and then we don't have a good draw engine. And then really we need a full bench out here. You need at least one Charmander on bench, you need a Pecharunt, you need Pidgeot, and ideally you have a Fezandipiti. So we want that full bench loaded up, which can sometimes have our opponents dealing more damage to us because of that, and also take long to set up because we need that full bench to really maximize what we're doing here, right? Now, some other cards to consider in here are going to be Max Belt. As I talked about early, if you want to kind of have an extra card in there for an ace-spec that guarantees more damage, I think Max Belt's probably the least one that I would think about, but one that maybe we'll think about as a Hero's Cape. This one would be one that I'd consider late game when we don't necessarily need to be poisoned anymore, but we want to get a little bit of extra life, so I'd consider that one. Now from there, let's think about Scoop Up Cyclone. That one was one, actually, I'm only putting in it because I like this one. I think it's kind of a funny idea to scoop up a Charizard EX and then be able to maybe immediately play him if you have a Rare Candy or already a Charmeleon evolved, and just kind of throw one back in. Because you could scoop up, it's kind of like a free retreat. Maybe your Charizard's already taken a hit, and then you just throw on more energy with the new Charizard's ability. I liked it. I thought it was honestly more funny than anything. Probably not good, so one to think about. Now this one though is one I would really think about, is Max Rod. As a lover of Clara, as I've mentioned, as a lover of Night Stretcher, this one is pretty good in terms of putting up to 5 any combination of Pokemon and basic energy from discard to hand. So this one can be really good if we're getting just killed by like bench sniping and things like that. We're able to get potentially multiple Charmanders and energies back in hand and throw them right onto the bench. So it's one I think about. I still think Prime Catcher's better, but honestly, if we would think about a different other than Prime Catcher, this one could be the one to go with. I don't know. Another one to think about may be Carmine, because if you go first, you can use this during your first turn, discard and draw 5. A solid card, like for example in my Wigglytuff deck that came out a few weeks ago, I played with just one. It's one to think about. It's one to think about, maybe even Professor's Research, but I think after your turn 1, you're probably not going to want to discard your hand because there's just too much that we need and too few numbers. Counter Catcher is one that sometimes people tell me I should play rather than bosses in this deck. It is just an item card, so I can pull it with Arven. And it would give you free some space up for supporters, but the thing is you can only use it if you're losing. I really love the bosses to end games, and that means a lot of times I'm ahead, or tied. So I prefer, to be honest, not. I would prefer to just keep our bosses in there. And then Roseanne's Backup obviously is the last one. This would unfortunately put you a card that's only good for the next month or two at the time of this video's release, but it is a good one because it's going to let you recycle your tools, your Binding Mochi, your Bravery Charm, so that's why I would consider this one in. And you can do the combination of energy, Pokemon, and tool. The problem that I was finding was that yes, I'm recycling more specifically the Pokemon, but a lot of times I would have been much better off just getting those directly into hand and maybe not getting the energy or tool recycled. So that's why I kind of took out the Roseanne's Backup and I threw in the Night Stretchers. Well, that's going to do it for this episode of the Hawks Pokemon Nest. I hope that you enjoyed. I hope you had a fun time this episode with our new and improved setup. Let me know what you think of it. If you've got any more tips for improved UIs and layouts for me, I'm still learning as I go. And as you know, at the Hawks Nest, we are passionate about reaching our peak performance. And part of reaching peak performance is all aspects: recording, sound, layout, not just the decks themselves, but we want the whole package here. So let me know. I'm always interested in that. And if you liked what you saw, though, please hit that subscribe button so you can become part of the Hawks Nest. We're a fabulous flock of fearless folks who love to do what they love. I love doing this for you all. I'm so glad that you allow me to do this. I guess I'd probably do it no matter what if I got like one view, because I just love it so much. But thank you for the support. I mean, all of the comments that you all leave make me so happy, and I'm glad that people are enjoying this stuff. If you're not quite ready to fly yet, though, just hit that like button. Hopefully we'll show up in an algorithm near you in the near future. But until then, we'll see you next time.